Jessica Lal was born on January 5, 1965, in New Delhi, and from a young age, she had already attracted attention for her beauty and intelligence. Her stunning appearance led her to a promising start in the modeling career, where she was praised for her elegance and grace. However, the modeling industry in India during the 80s was not exactly a path of glamour and easy money. Advertising campaigns were rare, and those that came by didn't pay well enough to sustain a stable career. Models like Jessica often found themselves limited to small gigs, such as appearances in films or occasional campaigns that lasted at most a year. As the years passed, Jessica saw the industry change, and as she approached her 30s, she began to notice that opportunities in the fashion world were dwindling. Work as a model became scarce, and with few options available, she started taking on side jobs to pay the bills, trying to sustain herself while searching for a way to revive her career. In 1999, Jessica's life took an unexpected turn. She was recruited to work as a waitress at a luxury restaurant in the heart of Mera, one of the most exclusive areas of New Delhi. The venue, known for its high standards and frequented by film celebrities, influential politicians, and other members of India's elite, was always full of powerful people. The restaurant, part of a high-end gastronomic chain, had a policy of hiring attractive women to serve its clients in an elegant and sophisticated manner. For Jessica, it seemed like an opportunity to start over, a new beginning where she could at least ensure her livelihood, even if in such a luxurious and demanding environment. It was a life very different from the one she had dreamed of as a model, but for someone struggling to stay afloat, any chance of stability seemed like a path worth pursuing. On April 29, 1999, Jessica Lal received an offer that seemed like her chance to shine again. The restaurant she worked at was hosting an extravagant party, and she was to be one of the waitresses for the evening, serving an exclusive group of 500 guests, including the famous Indian socialite Ramani. Among the notable faces that night was Manu Sharma, the son of the influential politician Manu Sharma, a powerful figure in the local scene. The party was a spectacle of opulence, and Jessica, with her elegance, was completely at ease among the high-profile guests. But what seemed like an ordinary night of work would soon take a tragic and irreversible turn. The following morning, April 30th, the party was still winding down. Around 300 people remained at the venue, exchanging farewells and engaging in conversation. The waiters had already started removing chairs and cleaning tables, and the bar, as usual, had already closed. It was around 2 a.m. when Manu, seemingly dissatisfied with the end of the night, approached the bar with some friends and ordered a cocktail from Jessica. However, she was already preparing to leave. The time had passed, and the restaurant's rules were clear: no drinks after the bar closed. When Jessica refused the request, Manu, irritated, tried to use his power and insisted he would pay any price to be served. "How much is it? $1,000? He said, his arrogance dripping from every word. "You don't even earn that in a month of work." Jessica, with a discreet smile, turned to walk away, ignoring the comment. It was at that moment that the tone of the night shifted entirely. Manu, furious and wanting to assert his power, stepped in front of Jessica, blocking her path. Before she could react, he pulled out a gun and aimed it at her. The crowd around them began to stir, but no one could imagine what was about to unfold. In a fit of rage, Manu fired a shot into the air, demanding his drink again. The place erupted into chaos. Screams, running, and panic spread throughout the restaurant as everyone tried to find shelter. But without further warning, Manu aimed the gun at Jessica once more, and in a cold act, fired. Jessica fell, and Manu, with the same brutality, fled the scene with his friends, leaving terror and disbelief behind. Those who were present didn't know how to react. The silence was followed by a wave of panic as everyone tried to understand what had just happened. What began as a night of glamour and shine ended in tragedy, with a young, innocent woman paying the price for deadly arrogance. Jessica was immediately taken to the hospital, but despite the doctor's efforts, she succumbed to her injuries and passed away a few hours later. The news of the crime spread quickly, and although around 300 people were at the party, none of them came forward as witnesses. Everyone knew who the culprit was. Manu Sharma, the son of a powerful politician, was identified by several attendees as the one who fired the shot, but no one seemed willing to face the consequences and testify against him. However, Jessica's story didn't end there. Her friends and colleagues refused to accept the impunity. One of the individuals responsible for the complaints, who had been near Jessica when she was shot, along with others, testified against Manu. Their courage was what sparked the investigation, though it quickly ran into obstacles. In the days following the crime, Manu was arrested, but something sinister began to unfold. During the preliminary inquiry, he confessed to the murder, but as if by magic, the case was abruptly closed. The police chief, citing technical procedural issues, sealed the fate of the case. The witnesses began to retract their statements. Some were bribed with promises of money and favors, while others were directly threatened by Manu's father. But Sabrina, Jessica's sister, was undeterred. She was determined to fight against the corrupt system that was covering up her brother's crime. The pressure was so great that a formal charge against Manu and 8 other individuals, sons of local politicians, was finally filed. These 8 helped Manu escape the crime scene and cover up the evidence. However, in court, justice seemed far away. On November 23rd, a first-instance judge found Manu guilty and ordered that he stand trial. Yet, the lack of testimony and the threats to those involved made the case unrecognizable in the eyes of the law. The police failed to present sufficient evidence, and once again, Manu was released. At that moment, the population's outrage was overwhelming. What should have been a trial, a search for the truth, turned into a story of impunity. The feeling that Manu and his family's power could suppress justice was crushing. But fortunately, some local journalists, with courage and determination, began to support Jessica's family. They exposed the flaws of the judicial system, bringing visibility to the case and feeding the hope that one day the truth and justice would prevail. Despite what seemed like a victory for the powerful, the fight for Jessica's memory was just beginning. Sabrina, the sister who could not accept the loss, continued her battle to ensure that her sister's life would not be erased by the silence of the corrupt. Over time, public pressure and the persistence of the media began to open society's eyes to the truth being covered up. Newspapers started publishing detailed articles about the evidence collected at the crime scene, shedding light on the events of that fateful night. Shan Musi, Jessica's colleague, decided to break the silence. He appeared on various television programs, sharing his version of the facts and describing the horror of the moment. For him, The motive for the crime was simple and absurd. Jessica lost her life simply because she refused to serve a drink to a rich and arrogant man who was more interested in showing off to his friends than respecting the rules of the establishment. Shan did not hesitate to expose Manu Sharma's nature, highlighting how he tried to impress his friends, showing off his arrogance and power. He constantly boasted about being the son of an influential man, believing that his status allowed him to do whatever he wanted without facing consequences. And it was this selfish behavior, immune to social norms, that led to the tragedy. After years of struggle, constant pressure, and a massive media campaign, on March 13, 2006, an appeal was made to the Supreme Court demanding a new investigation into the case. The process for a trial finally began to take shape. Jessica Lal's case returned to the courts, and the search for justice seemed within reach for everyone. On December 5, 2006, Manu Sharma's trial officially began, and after a jury trial, justice was finally served. Manu was found guilty of the murder of Jessica Lal and sentenced to life imprisonment. Furthermore, the court ruled that he would pay the victim's family a symbolic compensation of 57,000 rupees, an amount that, though small in the face of the irreparable pain, represented an attempt at justice. However, Jessica Lal's case wasn't just about Manu. It also involved the 8 individuals who were with him that night. These people, children of local political figures, not only witnessed the crime, but also helped Manu flee the scene and conceal the evidence. Sabrina, Jessica's sister, showed immense courage by refusing to give up her fight for justice for her sister, and it was crucial in ensuring that these accomplices were also held accountable. Her battle didn't stop until everyone involved was held responsible. In the end, the 8 were arrested and sentenced to prison terms ranging from 15 to 25 years. The victory of Jessica's family, led by Sabrina, became a milestone in the fight against impunity and corruption. It served as a reminder that despite everything, justice can prevail when the truth is defended with courage and determination. Manu Sharma, determined to escape the consequences of his conviction, appealed twice, hiring the most expensive and renowned lawyers in India. He was willing to use all his influence to overturn the sentence. However, both the High Court and the Supreme Court upheld the conviction, bringing an end to his attempt to avoid a life sentence. But despite being behind bars, Manu was not treated like any ordinary prisoner. In April 2010, he was granted permission to spend 30 days at home to visit his mother, who was ill. But this privilege didn't stop there. A few months later, he obtained another 30-day leave to take care of his own health. In total, Manu spent around 12 days outside of prison, a reality that many found outrageous, given the severity of his crime. During this time, Manu, with the help of his father's influence, began to engage in social causes. He founded several NGOs and associations dedicated to the rehabilitation of prisoners, presenting himself as a figure of redemption. Many believed these initiatives were nothing but a maneuver to gain public sympathy and secure an earlier release. But as time passed, on May 10, 2020, the unthinkable happened. At the age of 43, Manu was released. He had served only 17 years of his sentence, and the judge responsible for his case deemed him rehabilitated enough to re-enter society. What was even more shocking was that Manu was not released on bail, as is often the case with prisoners, but granted full freedom without any conditions. His release was, for many, a scandal, but for others it was a confirmation that his father's power and influence were still in play. After his release, Manu changed his name to Siddharth Vastes and somehow reinvented himself as a spiritual figure. He began presenting himself as a guru, preaching peace, humanity, and inner transformation. In an interview, Manu stated that he was a completely different person now and apologized to Sabrina Lau, Jessica's sister, for the pain he caused. While many remained skeptical of Manu's intentions, believing that he had merely manipulated the situation to gain freedom, some believed in his genuine transformation. During his time in prison, the NGOs and associations he had founded continued to operate. In fact, they grew, and Manu and his father expanded their activities across India, being treated as philanthropists and benefactors of society. They were applauded in various regions, with many believing Manu's redemption was real, not a facade. This story, full of controversy, is still an open wound for Jessica's family, especially for her sister Sabrina, who continues to fight for her sister's memory, questioning the true nature of Manu's redemption. While many consider him a model of overcoming, others can't forget the horrific crime he committed. Manu Sharma's story to this day remains a mix of compassion, manipulation, and for some, an endless quest for justice that never seems fully attained. Even Sabrina Lau, Jessica's sister, seems to have begun to believe in Manu Sharma's transformation. In an interview with NDTV, she stated, "For a long time, he has been doing good charity work and helping prisoners in various penitentiaries, which I believe reflects his transformation. Who knows, maybe one day I'll be able to forgive him." For many, this statement was a sign that, even after the tragedy, Sabrina was willing to view Manu's change with a more open perspective. However, the majority of the public, especially those who closely followed the case, did not share the same opinion. The indignation was palpable. Various protest campaigns, marches, and vigils took place in defense of victims of violence and against what many saw as a failure of the judicial system. The criticism was aimed not only at Manu's release, but also at the system that seemed to treat influential people differently. Many believed that Manu should remain behind bars, serving his sentence for such a serious crime. In a surprising move, the police commissioner of New Delhi announced that he would investigate possible flaws in the judicial process and even consider the possibility of a conspiracy to release Manu, as well as investigate potential evidence tampering. However, despite the efforts, nothing truly changed. The case of Jessica Lal became one of the most emblematic in India, primarily because it involved people from the country's elite. Many of those involved, directly or indirectly, were punished, but for many, justice still seemed far from being served. The discussions surrounding the case raised questions about the power of influence and the inequality in India's judicial system. Jessica's tragedy was in part caused by Manu's arrogance. As the son of a powerful politician, he didn't fear the consequences of his actions. The violence that resulted from Jessica's refusal to serve him, in his view, was simply a reflection of his uncontrollable ego. However, one undeniable truth is that if the media hadn't gotten so decisively involved, justice might never have been achieved. The public pressure created by the intense media coverage was what finally led to Manu Sharma's life sentence. But even then, he was later released, leaving many with a bitter sense of impunity. For Sabrina, although she fought to the very end to ensure justice for her sister, Manu's release still represents a sort of partial victory. She wanted him to pay for what he had done, but the system allowed him to leave earlier than many felt was just. The case of Jessica Lal, marked by this mixture of media, power and corruption, is still an open wound in the heart of Indian society, which continues to question whether true justice was ever really served. Jessica Lal was never forgotten, and her case continues to be discussed to this day, serving as a landmark reflection on justice in India. For many, Jessica's tragedy has become a symbol of the failures of the judicial system, especially when it comes to social inequality. The way her murder was handled raised questions about the difference between victims with power and influence and vulnerable people, particularly women and young people who are often ignored or silenced by the system. The comparison between Jessica's case and that of other victims, especially the poor, is inevitable. For them, justice is almost never achieved, and when it is often superficial and incomplete. The case of Jessica Lal was, without a doubt, a turning point. Not only because of how the judicial system initially failed to deliver justice, but also because of how the media and public opinion forced a twist, creating a scenario where, at last, Manu Sharma was punished. However, his early release highlighted the harsh reality that even after conviction, India's judicial system is still far from perfect. The memory of Jessica remains alive in the minds of thousands who continue to fight for justice, reminding everyone that the struggle for rights and equality is far from over. Her story